Hello and welcome to a new series of our YouTube and podcast citiesabc.com. My name is Dinis Guarda and we are here again to talk about ideas and the biggest challenge and opportunities that we are facing our humanity and our cities, and as well our infrastructure and organizations, especially when it comes to the relationships with technology, with digital transformation, AI, blockchain, the foundational technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, and as well about our new society 5.0, genesis and inception. In this series, we've been interviewing and profiling global CEOs, experts, authors, governmental officials, and more increasing people that are really making a difference using technology or using policies or thought leadership and research to come up with new solutions, but as well finding ways of looking at business and infrastructure, financial and cities in a better way. This podcast and series is part of the citiesabc.com platform. That is a fast-growing ecosystem that is quite new, and it was created in the follow-up of the Covid19 crisis, but as well creating and listing cities and creating infrastructure for them, and as well trying to connect the different organizations, cities, and the data and the operations. Today we have with us Thaba, that is a serial entrepreneur turned business leader and passionate in building highly efficient and performing teams, especially focused on high-profile cutting-edge technologies, innovation, and immersion 360 different IT systems. Thaba is an expert and as well journalistic, as you say, in terms of AI and blockchain, and has been as well working in some cutting-edge projects with the company Accubits, where he is the Chief Strategy Officer and as well the CEO for Middle East and Africa. And of course, in Accubits is already a massive company worldwide with infrastructure that had put a satellite on the space and has been working with the leading organizations like governments, intelligence agencies, and major corporations. And as well, they've been doing some of the cutting-edge solutions in terms of blockchain and AI. As well, with 12 years of experience, Shamir has been looking at new challenges, as well a thought leader, mentor to companies, and as well has been an author that has published a book on the impact of IT on the financial sector during the financial crisis, which is quite interesting, given the fact that we're going for a new financial crisis with COVID-19. So we'll touch about that. And as well, it's been, and is a global expert recognized in the areas of blockchain, artificial intelligence, tokenomics, and human experience, especially when it comes to user interface, technology, and as well the relationships that touch this. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Shamir. I'm looking forward for this interview and talk.
Thank you, Dinis, for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your program as well.
So, well, there's a lot of things to talk, and I think in your case, you are doing some of the things that I'm excited, especially the areas of cutting-edge solutions and technology. But as well, you have a quite broad background from India to Singapore and to Middle East. So let's start by your background, by your education, which is as well very multicultural. And I think it's particularly important because I see more and more people that are really quite successful have to have this multicultural background, and as well a capacity to look at different cultures, different layers, and as well to learn a lot of new things that are continuously changing. So first question about you, background, overview, and education.
Sure, and I think you're spot on. I mean, truly today with the borders becoming lesser and lesser evident, and the world becoming a one smaller place, being multicultural kind of plays a key role even in corporate environments. The background about me: I grew up in the Middle East, spent a lot of my time in Bahrain. Graduated in engineering, computer engineering from India. Started my work with one of the top IT firms for about 2 years, and then decided to pursue my business degree from SPJ in Singapore. So I spent about a year in Singapore, graduated during the financial crisis, and then worked for a multinational based in China. So that was an interesting tenure that I worked, mainly with the sports organization. So this was a company that was a design supplier for the Beijing Olympics and later on the London Olympics. So that was more of my first stint into the entrepreneurial venture, more of an entrepreneurial venture where I was actually assigned to set up their operations in India. So as a fresh B school graduate, that was a very interesting and exciting opportunity. And it actually got me right into understanding, how bureaucracy works, working with politicians, because we were primarily working on government deals. So that was how I got into working pan-India. And at the same time, we had interesting opportunities happening in the social media domain. So this was before the time when AI became mainstream. Me and my alumni from our B school, basically launched a new interesting startup, which is basically looking at social media monitoring. And this is again, before everything became mainstream. We had a good exit at the time, and we had the big guys in this domain, the likes of Salesforce and Systems coming into the space. So we kind of got out of that domain at the right time. So that was my venture into the second, entrepreneurial field. And then I had another startup which was mainly looking at relying on some of my past experience, again, in tech and social media, to kind of build a platform that would help consumers basically make decisions instantaneously using all of their data. So again, that was mining, data records, trying to build a social taste graph. So we had a good stint, but unfortunately the timing and the market from where we were launching weren't appropriate. So that got me back into the Middle East. I'm currently in Dubai. I've been operating out of Dubai for the last 7 odd years. And, we basically have been doing a couple of other businesses. There was one company that I exited about 3 years ago, which was mainly looking at customer experience solutions. So we were trying, again, I think all of the journey that I've had is relying on what I've done in the past and kind of adapting it to the needs of the present and the future. So this particular company was looking at helping large audiences navigate their way inside venues. So it's about wayfinding digital customer experience solutions. And there was a common link throughout my entrepreneurial journey. I was associated with the company from the very inception, in terms of supporting, developing all the engineering tasks that were required. So building new technologies, be it wayfinding, customer experience, AI conversational tools, and that was Accubits. So today, I'm proud to say that I've seen different facets as a client, a partner to Accubits, and today I hold the position of the CEO for the Middle East and African market and the Chief Strategy Officer for Accubits. And to me, again, it's very fundamental to what my core vision is, while being an entrepreneur and having a common vision for the company, which is why I decided to kind of join hands. So Accubits as a company has seen phenomenal growth from its inception over the last 7 to 8 years now, mainly focusing on emerging tech. So the company started working with federal government entities in the US, name it United States Postal Service, NASA, USGS, and built on top of that capability, building custom AI platforms as well as blockchain systems. So we got involved with blockchain pretty early on. And this fundamentally, the company is quite unique in the sense that it has a very big, hairy, audacious goal, which is the core vision with which we operate, which is 7 billion creative minds. And the idea behind that is that we truly believe that any technology, especially emerging tech in AI or blockchain, has the capability to liberate humans from the repetitive and mundane tasks so that they can focus on much larger problems. And that's where we believe in the 7 billion creative minds. So with that in mind, every project that we've touched till date has either the capacity to transform lives or touch 1 billion people. That's the kind of projects that we intake. So when you mentioned about the ChainSat project, which is the enterprise satellite blockchain project that we launched, that's again one of our moonshot projects. So that's been my journey over the last 12, 15 years now. And I'm quite enjoying the ride. It's had its fair share of ups and downs going through the financial crisis, but I think every step has literally made me who I am today.
Completely, and that's quite a wonderful ride that you've been having, and it's really impressive what you guys have been doing, both your personal profile and Accubits, because not a lot of companies can actually put a satellite on space, but actually in blockchain, which is quite well another another massive achievement. So I think before we go to Accubits, I would like to. So from your background, and especially from India to Singapore, where you study as well, and as well in Middle East, this is kind of very innovative environments. I think India is becoming the second largest economy in the world, probably in the next 10, 20 years. And it's already, in terms of size, the biggest market in the planet. But as well, Singapore is considered the most innovative country in the world, although very small, but in terms of innovation and performance by far, and as well one of the leading financial centers, and as well blockchain centers, and as well Middle East, which is kind of a, especially Dubai has been a kind of a effervescent environment with the ups and downs, but as well with the capacity to create a city in the middle of the desert. So from these environments, what would be your takeaways? Because I know that it's quite, I know there's a huge Indian community in Middle East, but at the same time, from India to Singapore to Dubai and Middle East is quite a big different backgrounds. So a bit of that background, I would like to hear that history of your personal, I would say your personal narrative on that, and as only person just understanding of these cultures and countries.
I think each region has its fair share of advantages as well as kind of limitations, to be more precise. So Singapore has been a phenomenal market, especially when it comes to fintech startups, ecosystems, venture capital, and it's definitely a melting pot for different cultures. And it's good, especially when you're looking at product development, to kind of imbibe some of the needs of consumers, and look at how you can actually get different perspectives when you build products, especially for the ASEAN market. And that's been quite interesting when we built the social media marketing or social media monitoring platform. India, on the other hand, like you said, is a massive opportunity, because there are so many problems that you can actually identify that you can solve, and there are so many creative ways of solving these problems. And that's one of the most interesting aspects about India. And over the last, I would say, about 10 years, we've seen a radical transformation in the ecosystem, especially in the startup ecosystem. There's been a real drive towards encouraging the entrepreneurial spirit. So there's different ecosystems spread across different parts of the country that actually accelerate and nurture this startup community. So we see a lot of student entrepreneurs coming today. I mean, obviously there's a lot of learning. There's failed startups. There's successful unicorns. Even in the edtech domain, I mean, there's even during the pandemic, there's a massive success, especially in the edtech domain. So one of the startups, literally the most valued startup in the edtech community, called Byju's, raised 400 million just during the pandemic. And so that just goes on to show that anything can happen, especially if you look at sheer scale of what is capable in India. So the way that I look at it, India actually lets you to build communities and startups which can actually stand the test of time. There's a lot of challenges building communities or startups in India. When it comes to talent and when it comes to validating your product. What's interesting about UAE and Dubai, for instance, and I'm sure you would understand this, Dubai has seen a massive transformation in just over the last 10, 15 years. And that's primarily due to the amazing visionaries that we have as the rulers of Dubai. And to me, Dubai is a great opportunity to actually test new technologies, as they're quite forthcoming when it comes to implementing and taking on new opportunities. And again, when I say this, it really drives down from the ruler and the basic vision that the country has. For instance, we're one of the few countries that have actually got a blockchain strategy in place for Dubai. And there's a paperless strategy which is already set in motion. We've seen the results. We've had 14 entities, the government organizations, that have reported a 64% drop in the use of paper by just going paperless. And we're proud to say that, we've been one of the first companies to actually deploy the first ever blockchain projects in the UAE. So we were closely working with the Dubai Land Department in terms of putting the land registry on blockchain. Although this may not be the first of its kind, we've done a couple of POCs, but this is the actual production grade project that we've been part of, associated with some of the government entities.
Now that is quite impressive. So I want to start with before we go to the blockchain and Accubits. So your experience in social media, and I think social media is particularly important because social media was the first really massive adoption of the internet, and it was the first stage as well of gathering data, managing data, and as well starting to have the impact in society that we have right now, probably social media, e-commerce in particular. So, and as well as the base as well when it comes to blockchain and all the different technologies right now. Of course, if you look at blockchain as the internet of trust, the social media, of course, is still a critical element. So from your experience in especially social media and all the interactive area of consumer data and different areas, how do you see that evolution from that angle right now to the inception of blockchain that is becoming right now mainstream? Because I think it's a particularly important narrative that I think sometimes when I speak about blockchain, you forget that. And I think your background on that is particularly interesting because it's still the most important. Let's say 90% of our time is probably in social media and messaging system, which is social media in itself. And blockchain is just creating a layer of trust around that. But how do you see that evolution of the internet and especially social media to the blockchain and of course AI?
In fact, when you look at that, it's, I think we got to go back to the internet, when the internet came about. So the internet was a massive revolution. I mean, I was in school when the internet came about, and, the opportunities that brought about was phenomenal. It brought about the transformation. I would say 1.5 is what social media did. So social media actually brought together people from different parts of the world to be able to communicate, to share, content and media. And that actually opened up, other opportunities as well. It actually inspired other business opportunities. Blockchain to me is, 2.0. And that really is the next wave of technology. So because what it does is it literally, like you said, bring opportunities to a trustless economy. And, I think it's a gradual progression. Like you said, blockchain is a layer on top of these existing technologies and platforms that allows us to do what previously could not have been imagined. So we see a lot of opportunities in fintech, in document management, in terms of validations, verifications. If you think about fintech, for instance, or just finance, for instance, what decentralized finance can do in terms of opening up the opportunities and kind of replacing what traditional finance and instruments do today is phenomenal. It's actually giving the same equal opportunity to anyone that possibly could not have even had access to such financial systems, simply because you had to pay a lump sum to the intermediaries involved in this entire chain. So I think it's got a massive transformation, and social media, like you said, if you take crypto projects today, you got to market yourself, you got to get the word out. Social media is a brilliant platform to do that. Today, we're seeing interesting opportunities in social media platforms as well, where you can actually run, completely decentralized organizations with the power of social media. So you can actually communicate, you can network, you can completely have a employee architecture which is completely decentralized. And I think social media has a key role in terms of doing that. I mean, today in the pandemic world where we're all at home, so remotely working, we couldn't imagine, being huddled up, completely devoid of social media.
Completely. So I think on that level, and I think coming back right now to Accubits and what you guys are doing. So like you said, you've been doing some of the first big cases in terms of blockchain worldwide, like you mentioned the land registration in Dubai, but as well other projects, and you've been working with the likes of NASA and the US government and so forth. So what would be, let's say, from the maturity of the blockchain technology that mostly started as its first proof of concept was mostly from the Bitcoin to the crypto and as well all the ICO industry until all these coins that right now we have 6,000 coins plus and a market cap of $400 billion still, or close to that. So what would be, how do you see this evolution of, first of all, of the technology, but as well of the ecosystem? Because you guys are part of both. I know that you're more on the technology side, but you have as well a strong, of course, the two things are interrelated. So just on the technology side, because you have both the technological, the financial, and as well the governmental logical, which most of the people, sometimes they separate the crypto and the blockchain, and very few people can actually mix the two things and understand as well the 360 part of this.
So we've actually gone through that journey, like exactly like what you mentioned. In the early days, people could not kind of distinguish or segment, blockchain from crypto. Since we work a lot with the governments as well as with large institutions, we had the experience of having to kind of educate and help them understand that you can have a blockchain platform without a crypto aspect to it. And that took time, but today we're seeing that awareness is there. So there's a fair maturity in the marketplace. People understand this concept fairly well. It isn't, something which is futuristic. It's there today. We have seen live implementations in production grade projects where we're seeing actual results. So today we've come to a point where, it's not a Bitcoin blockchain. We understand that there are frameworks that are, relevant for different projects. So if it's a remittance-based solution, if it's something about credentialing, authentication, or if it's just about a general ledger, you can have a DLT project without being a blockchain project as well. So that's the understanding that is fairly available. People understand those concepts truly better now. From an adoption perspective, we're seeing different sorts of implementations, be it in track and trace solutions for food, coffee, supply chain, logistics. In fact, one of our earlier projects in supply chain for a large conglomerate based out of Indonesia, we won an award from Frost & Sullivan on that particular project. That's been one of our very early implementations on a large scale with a consortium. Initially we used to think that for any blockchain project to work, you typically have a consortium involved because it's generally how these projects work, and it is when you're talking about a public blockchain. But there are real use cases for permissioned enterprise level blockchains as well. So the kind of projects that we've done at a government scale, even here in UAE, for instance, have been mostly permissioned blockchain networks. For one of the use cases that we've done, for instance, in Singapore, is an authentication or credentialing system for universities and schools. So the product is called AccuCerts. It's a permissioned blockchain platform that helps universities issue their certificates on the network.
So that is all fantastic case studies and as well amazing achievements. But one of the challenges that I've been facing working with governments and as well with a lot of entities is that first of all is the perception around the blockchain technology, and second, the scalability of a lot of these operations. So I think the vision of the master vision of blockchain and all the evangelists like ourselves is as well to create a world that has better connectivity, more internet of trust, and as well better capacity. But at the moment, we have a very fragmented world, or we have, for instance, actually even the paradox of the Chinese government that launched its own digital currency, more advanced than anything in the planet. And then, of course, Dubai, where you are, there is probably the most advanced all strategy for government in terms of blockchain and even AI. But then you have most of governments, even big governments, big countries that have no clue. So how do you see this kind of, first of all, the connection between all the dots of this kind of solutions that companies like yours are building and as well very successful with their lack of digital transformation? And I think, of course, when it comes to digital transformation, there's a lot of areas that is even more basic than actually blockchain, which is too advanced for that. Because, for instance, if you're looking at just a very basic number, is that there's 450 million SMEs in the world, and most of the data shows that around 80% don't even have a website. So it starts by that. So I would like, and as well, of course, this goes, like you said, the replacement of paper that costs millions of dollars, and as well is very polluted. And as well, like a lot of studies say that, for instance, even the notes that we use of money are passing a lot of germs, a lot of issues, especially right now with pandemic, that gets even more attention. But how do you see this, especially this scalability? Because I think for me, the challenge is how do you make these mainstream, but as well that the data passes with each other and avoids all the problems that we have, like fake news, and as well all these conspiracy crazy myths and stuff like that are proliferating more than ever. So it's a lot of part for the question, but I would hear your thoughts on this.
It is a challenge. It is definitely a challenge in this. In fact, that's exactly the concern that if you talk to a large enterprise or even a government organization, they're concerned about a lot of things. They're concerned about who owns the data, how is our data going to interoperate or communicate with another enterprise, and who has the responsibility of actually hosting the node. So these are some of the questions that come about, and I think even before that, you got to take a step back. So the key word that you mentioned is digital transformation. These are digital transformation initiatives, and for when you talk to any government, the challenge starts even before that, because most of the systems, if you look at it from an IT perspective, are legacy systems. So you got to start with actually working on those legacy systems and make it future ready, and even before you can actually have an implementation of blockchain on it. And these are real world problems, and when we face that in multiple projects as well. So that's step one. Step two is about interoperability, and everyone's talking about interoperability. There's been it's a fast evolving technology, but I think there's still a lot of distance to tread before it can actually be ported into action for a mainstream purpose, such as a large supply chain management, secure data sharing, and other processes. There's still a long way to go in that aspect. There are a lot of projects that focus on interoperability. One of the things that, what I've seen governments kind of take on, for instance, an example, case in point, which is Dubai Smart Government, they've actually evaluated different platforms and have kind of endorsed or chosen a platform that all government organizations in Dubai have to use if they have a blockchain implementation. So they're kind of creating a uniformity in terms of implementing any project so that they can interoperate. But at the same time, I think interoperability is something that needs to be looked at. Like you said, having a common protocol or a layer through which you can actually communicate. We have our own orchestration and interoperability platform that kind of solves a problem to a fair degree between certain blockchain frameworks. So that's something that I think is probably the way forward, at least till we figure out, is there a universal solution for all this?
Yeah, I completely, and I think this especially interoperability and as well the data connection is the biggest challenge, because at the moment most of the data is mostly in the hands of a few tech providers, which mostly are 5 or 6. And for instance, even this week that Apple reached $2 trillion valuation, which is more than all the FTC companies in the exchange. So it's kind of a paradox that we have right now. And of course, that shows as well how powerful these companies are becoming, even our companies. But the challenge is, how can we make this not to create another disruptive and dystopic society? So that brings me to the question related, and I want to talk more about Accubits, but before going there, to your book. I think your book is particularly interesting. As a paradox, it was written in the last financial crisis, and it's precisely touching the areas of how the relationship of impact of IT in the financial sector during the financial crisis. And as well, what is interesting, if you look at the last almost 10 years, actually more than 10 years, 14 years since it was the last financial crisis. And
Right.
at the moment we're going through a massive, it's a different crisis because the last one was a bit crazy. This one is not created by greediness, it's created by pandemic, but it's accelerating a lot of digital transformation because governments are obliged. And for instance, even I was just reading before this interview, I think the 4 trillion office business worldwide, which is more probably than 4, because if you put all the things, it's being disrupted because a lot of companies don't ask people to come back anymore to office. It's completely being disrupted. So this is kind of a, let's say, at the time of your study was the financial crisis. Now we're having a kind of a different shift from the present kind of template of society where people can work remotely thanks to technology and thanks to IT that has been evolving at a massive pace. And as well, even during all this crisis, we have to see that even the world working from home didn't collapse. So we're still going and
Right.
things are moving. So we need to look at the positive side. So how do you see this kind of evolution, especially with your book? And I would like to hear about that at the time and a bit of the parallel right now.
So that book was actually focused. I mean, during the whole financial crisis of 2008, because of the subprime mortgage, and it was a massive hit on various economies. And that book was primarily focused on looking at how the decisions IT managers took within their corporates impacted their organizations, and what kind of decisions should they be actually looking at as an impact of this whole financial crisis. So it had a very a lens through which we actually looked at corporations and how they can actually safeguard their business operations for the future. But it was quite interesting, the different perspectives that we came across, and that was the highlight of that book. But today, with the pandemic, there are people that are calling COVID-19 as a black swan event. Unfortunately, it isn't a black swan event. And we know, I mean, if you talk to any epidemiologist or virologist, we know that there's a sequence of how these outbreaks happen. And it is something which is predicted that would happen every couple of years. This isn't a black swan event at all. And what this has really done is to basically expose the weaknesses of organizations, governments as well, right? It just tells us that we're not prepared. So what it has done is accelerated, the weak points in what we have today, and basically exposed, everyone to actually take actions. So companies that survive, these challenges, or make amends and quickly kind of pivot around, are definitely going to have far better success in the forthcoming future. And like you said, it's actually completely done a paradigm shift for us, and the companies are actually thinking about letting go of their corporate offices because it's no longer required. They've seen productivity increases in their employees. We're able to do fairly well, working remotely. I know of companies that have actually let go of at least 5 different floors within their office spaces. They're quite comfortable operating the way they are. TCS, for instance, a large IT firm based in India, has said that they would have only about 25% of their employees actually work from their offices in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's a ground reality. From an employee perspective or from a corporate perspective, this does have few challenges. How do you actually manage your employees working remotely? There's a new way of thinking about corporate management or employee management these days. It's quite interesting. And I think, to look at the positive side of this is that, we are going to be better prepared. Corporations are going to be better prepared. And if you aren't prepared now, it's a wake up call, because this COVID-19 is not going anywhere. It's something that we probably have to live with for the next, couple of months, now probably a year. Schooling and education has completely changed. Children are now, forced to, basically study from homes. That has actually driven up the need for video conferencing solutions, edtech products and solutions. So it's quite interesting. Just Accubits, for instance, what we did in the light of COVID was to actually look at how we can respond to it, not just internally, but also externally. So one of our divisions basically launched a product, and we're quite proud of our team to do that, because they actually worked, literally 24 hours round the clock to actually pull off something like this. It's a full-fledged pandemic management system called Rebuild the Chain, mainly focused at helping government organizations to actually look beyond contact tracing and exposure analysis, which is just human to human, but also human to surface to human exposure analysis, and basically manage the pandemic from an end-to-end perspective. So these are the kind of innovations that we're seeing happening both internally, externally, and I think that's a massive opportunity that we should all kind of adapt. I mean, there are two ways to look at such instances, and that's one of the learnings that we had even during the 2008 crisis. There are two things that you can do. You can either shrink or expand. And it is a bold step. It's a risk-based move, but you need to mitigate your risks. You need to plan for those risks. And I think if you're able to kind of expand during such a challenging time, you have the ability to come out stronger than before.
Yeah, that will be a big thing. So I think now I would like to go a bit more technical. So you just touched, of course, blockchain, and how blockchain can have a weight and a bigger weight in a lot of different areas, including the future of work or the present of work, because it's becoming the present. And as well, some of the work you did in terms of big scale, like the project of Indonesia, the satellite that you guys put on space. So do you want to talk about these projects? Because I think it's interesting, because I think there's still a lot of, like we mentioned before, myths around the technology of blockchain, but as well, people, let's say a lot of people, even blockchain experts, they talk all about the common sense stereotypes, and they forget right now really case studies. And I think what you guys have been doing is really impressive, and I think it's important to highlight that. Just explaining in a simple way, of course, what you guys have been doing. Especially, I would like to hear about your experience with the satellite, as well with the Indonesia, and as well with the land registration. If you just use these 3 case studies, and if you want to, of course, bring another case study, I think it's interesting to listen how you guys put this working, because I think it's important even for other companies and organizations and governments around the world to look at this.
So let me start off with the Indonesian project. So this is a large conglomerate that is basically into manufacturing of tires, but they have their own, NBFCs, banks that actually provide financial assistance to, the wholesalers, retailers. They have their own distribution arms as well. So it's typically like a consortium project, but within the same ecosystem. So it'd be fairly easy to implement. So that was basically a blessing in disguise for us. But what we did for them was to basically ensure a full traceability of the entire supply chain, and look at how value is being created along the entire chain. So basically show the provenance of the material from the element level down to the entire distribution. So exactly where a raw ingredient had come in from, what price. And also help in terms of trade finance. So there's an aspect where you had a trade finance component where a supplier needed financial assistance, and that process of loan application or getting the financial assistance from a bank, which usually used to take about 24 to 35 days on average, was now made near real time, because they could easily assess what was the supply chain, what is the flow of deals that this particular supply had. They had complete transparency in this ecosystem, and so they could basically assess the credit lines that particular supplier required. So this was a very interesting project where we could actually see the tangible benefits of a blockchain implementation. With the Dubai Land Department, I mean, there are a couple of different use cases that they're looking at. One of them that has actually gone live is to actually put the land title deeds, or it's called a developer use case, where an investor purchases a piece of land or an asset. You needed to actually put that title deed on the network so that you could actually show the provenance, or how this actual asset has actually transferred from one owner to the other, and you have a fair market value for it as well. So this was one of the, I would say, very ambitious and very interesting projects that the Dubai Land Department had taken alongside their IT subsidiary, which is Ares. And we were part of that ecosystem to actually build this for them. So today, they've actually done more than, I think, about 75,000 transactions, to my knowledge, when we last worked on that particular use case. So they have onboarded a couple of banks and a couple of developers to pilot this particular use case. There are other use cases as well, which includes a marketplace for all of the properties. There's also a rental tenancy agreement on blockchain. So that could be part of the larger ecosystem for citizens and residents of UAE. There are other interesting use cases as well within Dubai, which includes reconciliation and settlement, especially at a government level. So the reconciliation across the governments used to take time. It wasn't an instant settlement. So now you can have a near real-time visibility on the revenue being generated at the government level across all 100-odd government departments. On the enterprise satellite, that's one of our very ambitious moonshot projects, where we did the project launch announcement earlier this year in January, and we have our launch happening on Jan 21, 2021. It's basically an enterprise blockchain on a satellite which we're launching, and the idea is to go extraterrestrial in terms of the network, so that we have more security in terms of how the network operates. And you can think about any sort of extremely confidential or secure data that needs to be running on this network. It could be healthcare data, consumer data, it could be private individual document vault. We already have one of our partners and blockchain ecosystem companies, which is called Atomgate, which is actually partnering with us. So they'll be one of the networks that we're running through this network.
Yeah, that's really impressive. So now, passing from the blockchain in terms of AI as well. So on the areas of AI, can you tell us a bit about, because I think, well, especially one of the space is really cutting edge, because mostly there's thousands of satellites in space, but what you're trying to do is one that is certified with blockchain, which is fantastic. And I'm sure that there's a bridge between blockchain and AI. So I would like to pass from that bridge, because I think it's particularly important as well to demystify, because when we speak about AI, there's a lot of different areas of AI. There's machine learning, there's deep learning, there's I can go for a lot of swarm intelligence, and we go for a lot. But so how do you see AI in your company? And we touch a lot of blockchain, but in terms of AI, and as well specifically some case studies that you can actually talk publicly.
I think we're betting a lot on AI. We have a separate wing which is completely focused on research and development in the field of AI. In terms of our core specialties, we focus more on computer vision, cognitive AI, conversational tools, building predictive models. We have a lot of, we kind of profess open source. So a lot of interesting stuff that we do is available as open source projects as well. So one of our own homegrown initiatives is a product that we call Emotix. Emotix is a computer vision product which can literally analyze any video stream or video feed and analyze anomalies. So this was actually an interesting project which we've actually got live, running across around 220 plus cameras in Abu Dhabi in a convention center. And what we were able to do is to analyze demographics of people that's coming in and out. So that when you do a facial identification without understanding the PII, just to deduplicate information inside the crowd. So basically looking at crowd analytics. There are a lot of interesting use cases. As a platform, it's capable of ANPR, vehicle type detection, even contactless attendance. So we've got an implementation now in a university campus across 3 different locations to automatically manage attendance tracking within classroom sessions. And it's now being adapted to online platforms as well, where teachers can easily understand the attentiveness score or the engagement of students. So this is a very interesting platform which has different use cases, even in terms of health and safety, compliance on oil and gas, oil rigs, etc. On the conversational side, we've built more intelligent bots. We're calling it intelligent bots because it's gone beyond just being an NLP processor or a voice bot. We've actually coupled workflows such as an HR bot or an insurance bot. So it takes the core aspects of what a typical HR does, and it tries to reduce the kind of communication or the back and forth in terms of transactional queries. So an employee can now make a request to apply for leave, understand what's his leave balance by typically conversing with a simple chatbot. So these are the kinds of conversational bots that we built. For NASA, again, it was more of a conversational bot, which basically builds on all the data sets that they have from existing web as well as other journals and media. So we're seeing massive adoption now because customer service is an aspect which most companies are looking at. They have an NPS and customer happiness score, which they're more concerned about now, and they're trying to automate a lot of these tasks. So I think that's one area that we're seeing. Besides that, there's a lot of other interesting stuff as well that we're doing, more of our moonshot projects. Some of them I can't talk about right now. It's in the healthcare domain. We're looking to kind of advance some of the vaccine research using AI. We are also looking at how we can actually help kind of take forward human capabilities using artificial intelligence.
Oh,
and there
good.
is a mix, like when you mentioned about the kind of culmination of blockchain and AI. There is an interesting project that we worked on, especially which is looking at data. So we worked on a interesting initiative with the government, basically to look at a data marketplace. And it's essentially a platform which helps entities and organizations to trade data as well as monetize the data, which is the new oil, while ensuring data authenticity as well as security. So we don't want misuse of information. There could be different types of data: secret data, private data, and open data. And we want to make sure that any sort of data streams or any sort of data that is being utilized, especially at a city or a nationwide level, is highly secure, and it protects or takes into account the interests and the privacy requirements of the soil as well as of the individuals. So this is a platform that is, again, built on blockchain, decentralized. But where AI comes in is because it actually takes into consideration what kind of data exists and how you can actually utilize that data. So we're trying to make it easier for data scientists, data engineers to work on data. It's got its own tools built in that can actually help make sense of data and build interesting data sets and data models.
So I want to touch that part, and we're passing 1 hour, but there's still, if you have a bit more of time, at least 1 or 2 more questions, but this one in particular. So want to touch on this data, and this is particularly important, and especially for platforms like Cities ABC, but I think for everything in the world, because it's all about the interoperability of data, and as well making sure that the data is coming from the right source. And at the moment, one of the things we have, and going a bit more technical, is that we have all these massive sources from the World Health Organization, especially in the Covid19, to the Johns Hopkins Hospital, to the all the governments have their own data, and then we have the United Nations data, and we have all these different things. But one of the challenges that we have is that this data is not flowing, okay? And what happened is that if you look at most of the media worldwide, we have a media just bombarding us, most of it with fake news, or at least with very lack of data, even basic data, because I think we have enough scientific and research capacity to at least get a bit of better communication between us. But of course, politicians try to use this in not necessarily the best ways, at least in some countries. So that part that you work on, this interoperability of data, and as well the crossroad of data from different sources, how do you see this? Because I think this is kind of what is the crossroad of AI? And I think for us, you have people like Ben Gorsel that I actually interviewed recently, and other different scientists, or even Elon Musk, So in one end, we have people that see like data being like the singularity, or at least open data, that all the data will learn with itself. Or then we have a bit more of a Elon Musk version of the vision that is a bit more dysfunctional and more radical. And probably although I want to be more with Ben, I think I'm more with Elon Musk, because I think, of course, we have to look at reality. And reality, even what Professor Harari mentioned in his last book, is that we're going to have a bit like colonization through data. So I know that is a sensitive talk. I don't want to go too much on the political side, but more on the technology side. So how do you see this being used in a good way, of course, and then in the best ethical way? Because of course it's always sensitive, because if you are in a country, you have to go through the rules of that country, and you can actually blame one person, but you in the end of the day have to follow rules. So, and as well, there's the European AI Alliance, there's a lot of GDPR rules, but in the end of the day, this is just in Europe. The rest of the world has no rules on this, and we are actually getting a bit of a Wild West. So I would like to hear that part from a constructor of technology, and as well interoperability of this data, but as well from all the different areas that come out of this.
There's definitely a lot of interesting things. So I think we're basically talking about data governance and ethics in data. And it comes to what are the policies behind implementing this, and how do you actually define how data is being utilized? And that's a core aspect of architecting a solution. So we've had very interesting discussions both at the government level and the enterprise level in terms of how do you construct a solution that actually allows complete audit trail of what kind of data is being acquired, how the data is being utilized, and how is it actually being modified in any form or manner. So I'm also pretty much aligned with like you said, Elon Musk. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with data, but I think there's a long way to go, because especially if you look at government data or even open data, there's unlabeled data sets, a lot of data that does not qualify for actually making any inferential information or building proper data models. That's a big challenge with AI. Building an AI model, you need good quality data sets and large volume of those data sets. There's a lot of good that can be done. There's a lot of negative things that can also be done. I think government and governance actually plays a key role there. I think it's not just a technology solution to combat that problem.
Where can people find you and read about some of your thoughts and different things, and about as well about the Accubits mail links?
I'm reachable on Twitter at Shamir Thaha. Also, my LinkedIn profile is available. You can just Google me up on Shamir Thaha, and I'm available to have a chat anytime.
Very good. And I know that you're doing as well some master classes and some things. Do you want to talk about that just a bit top level and the last minute?
So as Accubits, we are looking at kind of evangelizing some of these technologies through educational programs. We have webinars coming up as well, basically, trying to link different societal and economic and other aspects to how technology can actually solve them. So it's not just a tech thing. So we truly believe that technology can really help some of these problems. So the webinar and series that we are looking at is basically focusing on that. So we'll have industry and thought leaders from different domains giving different perspectives, exactly like what you're doing, Dinis.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. It's been a huge pleasure. Thank you. And we'll continue talking probably in the next future.